Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of CryptoScam. Today, I am joined by FluffyPony of the Monero project, and our topic of the conversation will be token. I am Tone Vase, but everyone should know that by now. Our contact information will be at the end of the show. And the reason I have Fluffy on today to help me try to dissect Dash and try to understand it for this series where we try to break down every token so newcomers and people that have been in it for a while kind of see our views, or more specifically my views, on how I feel these tokens play a role in the crypto economy. And I usually try to get like the best expert I can in order to talk about another one of the coins.
So I don't know why I'm here then.
Yeah, so, but this should be a great episode. So Fluffy, go ahead. Why don't you tell people something about yourself, and also why this man that's 3 times my size hasn't put me through the wall for calling him Fluffy.
Right, so I'm Riccardo Spagni, and I'm known as FluffyPony. You can find me on Twitter and Reddit as FluffyPonyZA, or FluffyPonyZA if you're American. And I am the lead maintainer of the Monero project, and so like I can tell you right now, already there are going to be like a whole bunch of Dash followers and fans that are going to comment and say, oh my God, there is a massive conflict of interest. And like, on the one hand, I sort of tend to agree, yes, you know, conflict of interest, competing project, blah, blah. But really, frankly, who is in a better position to criticize technical basis besides other technical people? And I guess that I
completely agree with that. And I don't want this series to be a debate. I want this series to be more like a fireside chat on projects. We have generally the same opinion. We might have slight different things. We might have different experiences with that coin. And we're gonna dive right into it.
Cool.
And the way this works is we're gonna talk about the beginning of a project, the current state of the project, and the potential future propositions. Mostly we're doing tokens, but we will branch out in this series to others. And I'll be honest from the start, Dash was actually one of the coins. You probably know this. Dash was my favorite altcoin for quite some time, until I decided to do a little more research, and then I came out and said I no longer have a favorite altcoin. I guess this is why I got that term of being a Bitcoin maximalist. So let's go from the start. So the biggest question that happened was the beginning of Dash. So the story was that there was an insta-mine, and an insta-mine is when you create a lot of the coins from the very, very beginning that basically do not follow the spirit of a well-distributed coin supply in the beginning of a coin. So Dash had that criticism, and Dash did try to squash that criticism, saying that this was by accident. We didn't mean to do it, but it's okay now.
And I guess, you know, something important to understand is, why is a fair emission valuable or important? And the reason is because the miners need to be incentivized with a fair emission schedule to go and put that coin out on an exchange, so ordinary users that aren't miners can get their hands in it. When you have an unfair emission schedule, it just leads to all sorts of mess and disincentives and people holding large amounts of coins that can do serious damage to the project without even realizing, regardless of their intentions.
Right. So let's just literally kick off right at the beginning of the project. We're probably going to spend most of our time in this first section because it is the most contentious one. And there was a very interesting BitcoinTalk post, and all the links will be in the description of this video. And because the print is kind of small, I did make screenshots so we can. Oh, that's not it. Here we go. So we can look at them in further detail. And I'm not sure who wrote this post. I don't know if you've read this post.
Yeah, I think
that wasn't you, I believe.
No.
Right? That wasn't you.
It is someone, just to sort of make sure everyone's aware. It is somebody who is a fan of Monero. Again, that doesn't change facts. Facts are facts, regardless of who writes the facts down.
I know, and that's how I see it. And we're having the same problem with the presidential debate, right? Everyone is going off who hacked DNC. Well, no one's talking about what information was released in that hack. And I'm the kind of person, I don't care who hacked them. I care about what was found.
That's it.
And this is another reason why I do not feel we do have a conflict of interest here talking about it. So this was a very interesting blog post talking about the very beginnings of Dash. This is before it was Dash, it was Darkcoin. But before it was Darkcoin, it was apparently it was a coin XCoin.
Yeah.
Okay, XCoin. And this person went through all of it, and he has links to this. I'm surprised this is still on the web. And as the criticisms, I mean, viewers can read it, he basically said that Evan was looking for people from the start for it to be a for-profit venture.
So this was not December 2013.
This is December 2013, at the very end of December. So probably,
and this is a mail that went to the Bitcoin Dev mailing list. So it's the Bitcoin Dev mailing list archives are cached in various places. So you can go read the email, and it's from Evan. And he talks about how him and Kyle are starting up this Hawk Financial Services thing, and they have started, and they're looking to basically launch an altcoin. And it's going to add useful services to the crypto coin ecosystem. Now, that alone should be an indicator of the fact that there is some planning around there's some planning around what they want to do. This is not this is December 2013. This is not them suddenly coming up with the idea in 2014 when it launched. We're talking about many months before, several months before it launches. And the fact that exists, that post exists, is indicative of the fact that there was a plan. And that's really like, you can make mistakes, but if you have a plan and you plan it from the beginning, then you can't later on go, oh, it was accidental. That's really what we're trying to establish.
Well, we'll get to that specific part, but right now let's go to the very beginning. What is the reason for starting a crypto project? Bitcoin, as we all know, everyone likes to get mad at Satoshi for having possibly 1 million coins, but at the time that he got them, they were worthless. He didn't know they were going to be this valuable. That was a true science project. So off the bat, with the very first of Dash, we already see that this was a for-profit venture from the start, and not just a scientific experiment to see what happens. And so that was the first one. And the next link talks about how Evan went out and said that there are problems, and the launch was going to be delayed. And this isn't a problem that I've seen in other crypto coins as well, because a lot of people learn from what people did before, and they became rich and successful, and they try to mimic it. So this was, as far as I know, the first time that the lead developer has promised the community that he is not going to launch it tonight, and then within 6 hours it launches. Okay? And there is a link to that post explaining it. So that was the next part. And right now, this is the view of the emission, and this is the emission over the first. This is the first 72 hours of the emission rate, and this is what it looks like for the first 100 days. And this is that insta-mine spike. This is what we saw from that community when. You know what, I'm not gonna draw on this, but everyone can see the spike in the bottom graph. This was that insta-mine where problems with the launch were identified, and the lead developer promised that it would not be launched until these problems are solved, but then it launches and catches everyone by surprise.
And the scary thing is that the top graph, I mean, we're talking about 1.6 million coins mined in the first 8 hours. That is a frightening number of coins that are mined, in such a short period of time, especially given the fact that the total number of Darkcoin, XCoin, whatever, has changed several times. So you start off with this premise of, okay, maybe 1.6 million coins mined in 8 hours isn't a lot if our total emission is 50 billion coins. But if the total emission is going to be, 21 million or less, suddenly 1.6 million coins in 8 hours is insane.
Right, and you put this graph together, correct?
Yeah, I did.
So why don't you just go through, this will be on audio and video, so not everyone would be able to see these graphs if you're listening to only the audio. But Ricardo also put a graph together of specific emissions of each block and how many coins were released in the block for the first 24 blocks.
First 24 hours.
First 24 hours.
So
this isn't blocks.
No, this isn't blocks.
This is
hours.
Coins per hour of multiple blocks in that hour.
So what I did is I went and scraped the official for when it was on the Darkcoin website, and I took the timestamps from the blocks. And then I said, okay, so let's take all the blocks that were mined in the first hour. What's the total emission? And it's 575,000 Darkcoin Dash, and in the first hour. So it's over 500,000. And like the crazy thing when you look at the graph is just how the block reward sort of goes up and down, up and down, up and down. Now, if in the first hour of a cryptocurrency's launch, you see that the block rewards, there's something wrong with it, your difficulty adjustment or whatever, something's gone wrong. Surely at that point, within the first hour, you go, oh dear, something's gone wrong. I can see something's gone wrong because there's, over 500,000 that's been mined. Let's stop this. Let's figure out the problem, and then let's relaunch. It's the first hour. Who's going to lose out on anything in that first hour? No miners are going to go, well, I'm never going to mine your thing again because you stopped it after 45 minutes.
Well, I've seen that happen, but it's always happened in reverse. I mean, there will be other coins that we will talk about in this format where the coin was stopped after the first few hours, but that's because the lead developer didn't get the reward he expected, right? In this case, the lead developer got more of the reward they expected, and they didn't stop it. It's like the opposite of how these things should really be launched.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's jump on to the continuation. So after that, after the moment that the coins had already started mining, there were 6 million Dash in circulation, and there were supposed to be 84 million X coins eventually.
Yeah, so 2 million is not a bad number out of 84 million, right?
Right, but the spec of what the finality of those coins will be wasn't even released till after the coin was launched. So that's another thing that's pointed out with the links here, is that the day after mining had begun, that's when the full spec of what the coin will be actually came out. And then the day after that, the name was changed from XCoin's coin. And that just seems weird to me. Like, within 1 week, you've decided to already rebrand, and it just feels like, well, just to make new people years from now harder to find the very beginnings of what really happened. I mean, that's my only real explanation. I don't know what else. I understand that people rebrand. Mostly they rebrand for reasons because they found out someone on the other side of the world happened to have a part of the trademark. There's some kind of infringement. Occasionally, companies rebrand in order to have better with their product when they completely change it. But I've never heard of rebranding after, within the first week.
Yeah, I think the other thing is like you're right. I mean, that I don't want to sort of go in and say, well, everyone has bad intentions, but it is kind of odd. It's kind of odd to have the succession of rebrands where the original or the origins of it become obscured. And I think that even more frightening is the official statement from Evan, who, again, I mean, I don't think he's a bad person. We're just talking about facts here. And his statement was that XCoin was just a hobby. He started working on it. He had a full-time job. He coded it up in a weekend. Now, that's fine. I mean, like, if that's the premise and that's what you're going to state, that's fine. But it doesn't make sense if suddenly after that weekend, within a very short period of time, you've got all these plans that you release to the public, because that's kind of disingenuous at best, that you've got big plans and all of that, but you don't talk about them at the beginning. And sure, plans develop over time, but I mean, the fact of the matter is that we have evidence going back to the mailing list that there were plans. Now, why weren't those plans detailed? Why weren't they detailed before the launch? Hey guys, I'm going to launch a coin. I'm going to call it XCoin or whatever, and this is what I'm going to do with it. It's going to have or privacy or whatever mixing. Detail some of the stuff. The lack of detail, when we know for a fact that there was a plan of some sort, because there's this email to the Bitcoin dev mailing list. And the fact that that there's this rapid rebranding and change in the emission schedule, where it went from 84 million XCoins as the original premise to between 14 and 16 million as what we now know today to be the final emission. Like, it just changes things materially, because now 2 million Dash mined in the first 24 hours suddenly becomes a huge portion of between 14 and 16 million Dash.
And that's a good point, because as this very detailed research points out, and I'm glad somebody did this, because it's paid to do this kind of research in the space. You really need enthusiasts to go out and do it. So I'm glad somebody did this. So when that first batch of 2 million coins was insta-mined, under the assumption that there will be 84 million coins, it doesn't seem that bad. But then if you get the spec, and it's like there's only going to be 14 or 16 million, now it becomes a significantly larger percentage.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think everybody can see it. So, and that's just a summary of the person that I don't even know who this was. Maybe if you're watching this, please leave a comment in YouTube. And I definitely appreciate all the work that was put in for some of that initial research. And so afterwards, and I know we're spending a lot of time on the very, very beginning, but in this particular case, the beginning is very, very important. Afterwards, what happened is that Evan was saying, well, this turned out to be a good thing because now we were able to fund development. And we'll get to that in a later on because we have a section later on how Dash is doing today and what its future proposition is. But to mention in the beginning is they are changing the spec, and you also put together a very interesting piece about all of the problems you see in Dash, and I really found some of the comments to what you wrote interesting.
Yeah,
they're not scientific. They're not disproving your points. They're just complaining that you were the one that wrote it.
Yeah,
which is very, very strange.
That tends to happen. I mean, like I'm always very cautious when I openly criticize other projects. I try to link to things and to demonstrate the fact that I'm saying, or to back up an opinion. And when the replies to that are not, here's a fact to disagree with what you've presented, and the replies are instead, well, who are you? And you're a Monero developer, and a conflict of interest. That's like it's not even a relevant answer. Technical people are going to have technical criticisms about other projects. The way you defeat the technical criticism is with a technical reply, not with, oh, who are you? And, your reply sucks.
Right. So is there anything else you want to add on the very, very, the first, let's say, 2 weeks of Dash's existence? Yeah. Or did we cover pretty much all of it?
I think
that is the most important part.
It is, yeah.
But we are going to talk about a lot more.
I think the one thing that also is also strikes me as kind of bizarre is the proof of work algorithm that he invented, X11, which is literally just taking 11 different hashing algorithms and smashing them all together. And this flies in the face of good cryptography practices, because it leads to pre-image attacks and all sorts of stuff. And it boggles my mind that anyone would go down this road and call that an invention. But it really does indicate that we're talking about somebody who was not a cryptographer, was with incentives and game theory and cryptography, and yet launched something that requires such a strong understanding of incentives, game theory, and cryptography. And so even from the outset, you've got massive fundamental problems, definitely in their understanding of how a cryptocurrency should work. And there's no getting around that.
Okay, so right, so thank you for explaining all that, and I think we did a good job going through the very, very beginnings of it. So let's just a quick story. You will, if people are Googling me and you Google me in terms of Dash and Darkcoin, I was enjoying Darkcoin. I bought some in the 2013, 2014 days. I think it was 14. And I like their proposition, but I did not look into the details. None of us really did back then. The altcoins were coming out. A lot of us were fans of altcoins. We have different views on them today than we did back in 2014. And I like the proposition. Oh, an anonymous coin. Learn more and you read more. He's like, well, what exactly is making it anonymous? And who is doing any of this? Who is peer reviewing them? Who is checking this code? And then you start to get more to the bottom of it. So once I learned all of this, and this is why I wanted to make this podcast, because I learned all this and I took the time, and I just want one place where I can put all of that information out there. Okay, so now let's move on to another thing. So they've implemented several things since that first week. And two of them in particular I want to talk about. One of them is the idea of, let's do DarkSend. The DarkSend and InstantX. And that involves the master nodes, correct? So we can talk about both of them together. The concept of a master node and what it does, and is it really useful for DarkSend? So my understanding of a master node, and I talked to people back when they first came out, you put up 1,000 Dash and you lock them up, and they serve as a mixer. Right?
Well, I mean, those 1,000 Dash don't serve as a mixer. So this is where it gets confusing.
Okay, so for some reason, I thought that they served as a mixer. But even if they don't, basically, you're forced to lock up 1,000 Dash to create this ability to obscure transactions. So maybe if you know more details, I would love to hear it.
So masternodes as a concept, they're kept quite general. So a masternode is this thing that you run, and it's kind of like a normal Dash node, but it can do other stuff too. And because you're doing all this other stuff, you get rewarded with a portion of the block reward for running a master. Now, the first thing that they added with masternodes was this DarkSend, which is now rebranded to Privacy Protect, with all the rebrandings. And basically what happens is you've got all these masternodes, and currently there are 7,000 or 8,000 of them, however many there are, and each of them have 1,000 Dash locked up. And then if you want to send a transaction, you send it, and a randomly selected masternode receives a transaction, and then mixes with other transactions that have been sent to other masternodes, and eventually, with a whole bunch of cycles, new coins come out that are unrelated. Now, it's basically CoinJoin. The problem is that it's kind of a dodgy way to do CoinJoin. And in fact, like, the 1,000 Dash, if that was used as like currency or liquidity for mixing, that would be far better than the current mechanism, which is they're paying liquidity providers to provide mixing liquidity over and above the 1,000 Dash that is held by each masternode. So it's kind of like okay, I kind of get what you're trying to do. You're kind of trying to do some sort of decentralized, volunteer-based mixing scheme, but the 1,000 Dash lockup just sucks liquidity out the market.
And that's what I want to talk about, because I'm more of a finance guy. So for me, I will outsource the technology, and I'll entrust the encryption, and I'll entrust the privacy to smarter people that are, hopefully the code is being peer reviewed by other smart coders. I will outsource that. But from an economic perspective, well, we're locking up 1,000 Dash and all these master nodes. So you are shrinking the liquidity, which again, other coins try to mimic by locking up your coins to prevent any kind of major selling. But the way they did it was to reward the 40% of the block reward, I believe.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And they're now distributing it to master nodes. And I was going to talk about this in a slightly later section, but it's relevant. So to me, how is this any different than 60% proof of work, 40% proof of stake?
Exactly, which we know is broken and flawed in many ways.
Right. And this is one of those cases where, to me, if your coin was proof of work and you decide to then turn it into proof of stake, I mean, if you decide to turn, I don't know, maybe 5% of it in proof of stake, I wouldn't be as up in arms. But once you're reaching 40%, or in the case of other coins, 95%, now you're saying, well, isn't this a way for those early miners and early to to continue taking advantage because they're no longer competitive in mining, but they have all those coins in the beginning, something that Satoshi is not able to do.
Yep.
But they're able to do it. And because of that pre-mine, you just start connecting these dots.
Yeah.
I've heard crazy estimates by people how many masternodes they think Evan himself owns, and other people that were in that original 2 million pre-mine, how many of those masternodes are actually theirs in order to collect 40% of every block reward.
Well, you know, the fundamental problem, just from a technical perspective with masternodes, is very simple. How do you prove that a piece of work has been done? Well, you know, proof of work. You give the piece of work, it gets done, you get the hash back. Okay, cool. Yes, proof of work. And proof of work, as respects Bitcoin, is really one of the crucial things because it prevents a whole class of attacks against Bitcoin. Now, with masternodes, how do you prove that masternodes are participating in the network? Well, you know how they've done it in Dash? Uptime. So basically, masternodes get pinged. If they don't respond to pings, then, you know, they're obviously not up. And if you're not up for a period, I think it's 17 minutes or whatever it is, then that masternode is considered down and it misses out on the next payment. And I mean, you know, there's some convolution on the scheme, but basically what it boils down to is uptime. That is not a measure of work. If uptime was a measure of work, we would have no mining in Bitcoin. We could just, you know, ping all the nodes and say, oh, they're all up. There we go. There's a measure of work. So we've already got this fundamental break, this thing that makes no sense because we're measuring the work that masternodes are doing literally just based on them being up, which means I can have a masternode and all it needs to do is respond to pings. It doesn't actually need to do anything else. It doesn't need to participate in the network in any meaningful way. And if, you know, now that's already, your mind should be going, well, that's a bit weird. But now think about the class of attacks. If you want to take something off the internet, what do? Denial of service attack. We all know what denial of service attacks are. It's when a whole bunch of computers hammer this poor little machine on the internet, which then eventually gives up and just, you know, shuts down or overloads or whatever. So if as a masternode operator, you want to earn a greater portion of the masternode reward of that 40%, all you have to do is take your competitors down. And you can do that with denial of service attacks, which are cheap and easy. And if you keep hitting your competitors, the other masternodes, with denial of service attacks, they will shut down, they will give up, they will dump their coins on the market. You'll be able to pick up those coins for cheap, and eventually you will own thousands of masternodes. And even though this is arguably not happening right now, because everyone in the small community is behaving relatively well, as we've seen with Ethereum, when you get bigger, you attract attackers that are clever, attackers that are motivated, and attackers that have the funds to go and pay for a denial of service attack or just do it themselves. So we're going to, at the very least, in something like Dash and that sort of system where your proof of work is literally uptime, you're going to end up with clustering and with a cabal of maybe 3 or 4 people owning all the masternodes. And how is that at all advantageous? How is it at all decentralized?
Right, and I agree with lots of that. And again, it took me a little while to get here. This is why we put out these videos. This is why we try and educate the community, even though some of the things we may say will be controversial. But okay, so I think we covered masternodes. We've covered DarkSend. What about InstantX? Do you know much about that?
Yes. So InstantX is their claim of instant or sending instant transactions. It works in a very similar way to Green Address. Basically, what happens is you send a transaction, and a masternode picks it up, or a group of 3 masternodes pick it up, and they go, we guarantee this transaction because we have 1,000 Dash that we'll lose, or we'll lose a portion of it if we don't guarantee it. If all 3 masternodes cannot agree on the validity of the instant transaction, then it just falls back to normal proof of work. However, if all 3 or 2 of 3 or whatever their scheme is agree that this transaction is valid, then off it goes and it's instantly confirmed. Now, the problem with this is very simple. If instant transactions were that simple, why would we even need masternodes? I mean, there would be much simpler ways to do it. And in fact, we know simpler ways to do it: Lightning Network, Tumblebit, and so on. The issue here is that a transaction is not final until it's confirmed on the blockchain. And you cannot fake that by having some people pony up money with their masternodes. Because what happens if I release 4 transactions, InstantX transactions that double spend, and I just target them at particular masternodes. The entire network cannot possibly have the same state. They can't have consensus on state. You can't have consensus on mempool. And so there's going to be at least some disagreement between masternodes as to which of those transactions are valid. And it's entirely possible that from a merchant perspective, they might see multiple transactions, or multiple merchants might see the same transaction or a double spend as valid because I've just sent it to different masternodes. And I mean, this is, these are not theoretical attacks. These are attacks that are trivial to make practical. Of course,
if no one's using it, they haven't really seen it as an attack vector.
No, they haven't. And the criticism, by the way, when this gets brought up, because I have brought it up before and other people have brought it up before, the response to that criticism from Dash is, well, if it's so broken, then why don't you go ahead and prove it? Which
you need
silly.
Major vendors constantly accepting it.
Yeah, otherwise there's no point.
You need trust on the system.
Yes, otherwise I'm not. What am I attacking? I'm attacking something no one.
All right, so that's pretty much a quick view on the technology. So now let's talk about what's happening now, and we just slowly migrate the topic of the use case. Is anyone actually using Dash? But one of the ways they're trying to get people to use Dash is, and I'm going to show, these are all the sponsors. By the way, we are at TNABC, which is the annual conference in Miami, and I'll put this right to the camera, and you see Dash right there. Okay, so Dash is a sponsor of this event, and I have never seen like all this. Anytime a token or a coin or money, can you imagine the euro sponsoring a conference? Like the euro currency, the South African rand is sponsoring this conference.
It's ridiculous.
Like, it really does.
Yeah.
And they were also here last year with a booth. And all the other coins that I've seen sponsor events and sponsor the tokens, like that puts a huge question in my mind. Where is this money coming from?
Yeah.
Where is the motivation? That bothers me when a token sponsors an event. I've never seen it with Litecoin. No. I know I haven't seen it with Monero. I've never seen it with Bitcoin. There was the football game sponsored by Bitcoin, but that's because BitPay is a company. They spent the money as a private company.
Yep.
And they could have named it sponsored by BitPay.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure why they didn't do sponsored by BitPay, but they wanted to promote Bitcoin itself to the community. So that was like nice of them. But a coin sponsoring a conference, what are your feelings about that?
Yeah, I've been openly critical of stuff like this in the past and even recently, because I think can you imagine being appointed as the marketing director for the rand or the euro? Can you imagine, like taking out Google ads? Use the US dollar now. It's the best currency in the world. I mean, the whole idea is so ridiculous. I mean, people should use something like a currency because it is useful, because it's usable. Advertising is just the antithesis of what you're trying to accomplish here. And you're just providing like this central control structure, which is really what we're seeing develop in Dash, is a central control structure, which again is the antithesis of a decentralized currency.
Right. No, and I agree with that. So that's one of the things I also wanted to bring up. And is there any efficiency that they can offer above something like Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, they claim various efficiencies. They claim that there are thousands of masternodes, and Bitcoin only has 5,000 nodes. And so, look at them. They're so much better with all their nodes. But again, we've already demonstrated that a masternode doesn't need to be an active participant in the network, and it could just really be a pseudonode doing nothing and still get paid. Right. So that's kind of pointless. They also have claims of governance, of a governance structure where masternodes vote. So the sponsorship here today, the money would have come from a portion of that masternode reward, which is then pooled for Dash expenses. And the masternodes voted, and they said, yes, let's spend a portion of these expenses on sponsoring this conference and having a booth. And like my issue there is, so we've already spoken how the masternode voting, or masternodes in general, could end up being owned by, or will end up being owned by, a cabal of a few people. So what's the point of voting?
Right.
Like that's already stupid and like silly. But over and above that, like you've got this funding thing which they claim is amazing, but all you're doing is you're incentivizing people to come in and like pitch things that earn them money for absolutely no real value, because they just want to get a portion of Dash, because they can, because if they can convince the masternode operators to vote, then they'll get a portion of Dash. And I don't know if you heard about the Dash ATM.
I've heard that they were gonna put together ATMs, but I don't know what happened to it. I've never seen a Dash ATM.
No, because the guys that did that, like, I don't even know. I mean, you know, I'm not very familiar with all the politics going on there, but as I understand it, there's been a whole bunch of money paid for a whole bunch of work, and nothing's materialized.
But that's common in many aspects of the space. I wouldn't even put it to that. But
it's common. But the problem here is that masternodes voted for it, and it was funded from that portion that's set aside for the budget. So it's now like, what's the point of your voting and governance infrastructure if you're funding scams?
Well, it's also goes, and we're going to talk about this part in what we see for the future of Dash. Like, how are you an anonymous coin for gray markets, more privacy, when every month things are looking more and more centralized?
Yeah.
And we'll get to that on one side. I think I had one topic as far as adoption goes. So I don't know. I've seen like some people, the believers in Dash, accepting it. They may own a business here and there. I mean, I own a business. I only accept Bitcoin. If I happen to be on the premises and someone came in and said they wanted to pay with Dash, sure, I'll put them through Shapeshift. You know, I'll take the money for my service. I don't care. But I'm not. But I wouldn't put it on my website. But I have seen it. But I believe one darknet market or somebody accepted it but then dropped them. Like, have you seen the adoption of their token having any kind of traction?
Look, you know, the problem with a lot of this stuff is you've got companies like Coin Payments and Shapeshift that accept it, and then basically what ends up happening is they're able to go and say, well, every single company that adds Shapeshift as a way of depositing supports Dash, but it doesn't really. You know, that's like okay, so you can use Monero with Shapeshift. It doesn't mean that Monero is accepted anywhere, and I think that of native adoption of companies or merchants saying we accept Dash natively and we don't accept Bitcoin is indicative of that. There are some, I've heard that there are one or two, you know, or you know, maybe even several that go, we only accept Dash. But the thing is, why? You know, why are you only accepting Dash? You know, you're doing it because you're part of the community and you own a masternode? Or are you doing it because you see magical efficiency gains because InstantX is blowing your socks off and you want to use it, and so therefore you're accepting Dash and not Bitcoin? We're not seeing that. What we're seeing is companies that already accept Bitcoin and then add Shapeshift, or already accept Bitcoin and then also accept Dogecoin and Dash. You know, stuff like that. It's like, okay, we get it. You're a fan. That's not real world use. That's not, you know, hello, we accept this for the following reasons. You're accepting it because you own some and you want your money to grow, your holdings to grow.
All right, so now let's talk about the potential future propositions. So where do we think this coin is going from here? And I do have some notes. So the coin has been double pumped as far as price is concerned, and it's actually one of the few coins that did. Could that be something? I don't know. I don't think so. That is unique in the space. Every other coin usually only pumps once, and then it never reaches back to its high. Litecoin went all the way to 50, and now it's around $3. Never went back up. Ethereum was around $1, then it went to 20. It slowly fell, but it hasn't gotten back. Hasn't made a second all-time high. So Dash does have that, but that's also because Dash was out fairly early. And there was another wave of coins. So here's how I explain it.
Plus the lack of liquidity because of masternodes.
The lack of liquidity helped, but here's what I think helped.
Yeah.
The first time Dash pumped by price, that was the wave of everybody being in love with altcoins until they realized, well, okay, so maybe that, maybe there isn't, you know, maybe having a million altcoins isn't a good idea, right? So that was the initial pump of Dash, along with all the other altcoins like Litecoin and Peercoin and Namecoin and all of them.
Yep.
Some of them don't exist. And Aurora Coin, my favorite, by the way, is Aurora Coin. I love talking about Aurora Coin. And we will get to Aurora Coin in this series. I believe Aurora Coin is number 80 something by market cap. I will attempt to get through all of those coins just to get to my favorite coin, Aurora coin. My second favorite coin of all time is Paycoin at number 400 something.
Nice.
I'm not sure. I will try to get to it with the series.
You might need to skip a few.
I may need to skip a few only because maybe those coins can help me out and they can remove themselves from the list, and like Paycoin will slowly move its way up. But and so that was the first initial pump of Dashpay price. But then they also benefited from this 6 months ago where there was this, oh my God, we need Anon coins.
Yeah.
And Dash was marketed as an Anon coin. So they were able to participate in both. A second pump was the Monero price pump, and the Dash and Black coin, and there were a few others.
Yeah, there are a couple other small ones that pumped as well.
And Zcash contributed to this because they spent a lot of money getting Zcash off the ground, claiming how important anonymity is, and that helped with that pump. So that's one of the reasons why it had that double pump.
Yep.
So I wouldn't read too much into it as far as its long-term usefulness. And anything you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest issue with this is, let's say that we can ignore some of the classes of attacks that I've mentioned earlier. Let's say we can ignore the insta-mine. Let's say we can ignore all of that stuff. Is there enough goodness? Is there enough development and innovation that's happening that you can go, well, we can ignore all the bad? And unfortunately, with 99.9% of altcoins out there, Dash included, the good does not outweigh the bad. And you can't say, well, we're going to ignore the insta-mine and we're going to ignore the 1,000 Dash that gets locked up from masternodes. We're going to ignore all of that because here's this holy grail that they've managed to create. You can't, because the bad is so very bad. And so any remote little bits of, InstantX, whatever thing that they're doing that is maybe magically remotely cool, it's just not good enough. It's unfortunately simply not good enough.
So I just wanted to share the screen. I forgot I had it ready. So this was that double pump. So this is the initial pump. This was where all the coins pumped. So if you look at the dates, this is July 2014, and this is for the live viewers on YouTube. There was a pump of coins in the summer of 2014 where everything here is Namecoin. It also hit its top in late 2013. So this was back when altcoins were becoming popular, like around that time. And but it did go. We have to acknowledge it. The price does matter. Okay, so let's continue on with other parts of the future potentials. So here's one that I even have this problem in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is probably the most decentralized cryptocurrency. I know you're part of the Monero, and we will get to Monero. Monero will be in this series. And I have the same problem in Monero, but Dash takes it to another level. How can you claim to have a private cryptocurrency where the lead developers are public people?
Yeah.
And I struggle with this myself, and I worry this even for Bitcoin, that too many of their developers are too important to the project and they're too public of people.
Yeah.
And Dash takes it to another level with, they're very public about it.
Yeah.
And if they were to become what they're claiming to become, attack vector from the industries of who they are trying to disrupt, which is mostly government currencies.
Yeah.
And is this something you worry about? You have a slight advantage by not being an American citizen, which helps a lot.
Hiding in South Africa.
Right. Didn't really help Kim.com all that much, nor Julian Assange, but at least it's some level of protection.
Yeah.
And this gives a big pause when these people are Americans, or at least have American passports or ties to America or even Europe. These very, border. I mean, I wouldn't call them. They're highly socialist societies.
Yeah. Look, I think, even on a personal level, I sometimes am concerned for my safety being a public figure. The thing that I really appreciate about Bitcoin and to a lesser degree about the Monero contributors, is that like Bitcoin has several key contributors like BTC Drac who are anonymous and who have fantastic OPSEC. Nobody knows who they are. Well, presumably there might be some, but nobody, like, well, we don't know who they are. And if a certain group of known Bitcoin contributors had to disappear off the face of the earth tomorrow, the project would continue. Because it's not reliant on those known contributors. It's reliant on the group of contributors as a whole. And that is anti-fragile. And if you instead go the opposite way, where you have a company or a small, or not even a small, even a big group of contributors or developers who all work for the same company or organization, and that is the only group of developers, and that is your apart from the handful of people that might submit the occasional pull request, you're basically just providing governments or attackers with a single lever of control, a single point of failure, a bus factor. And so that is, again, the antithesis of creating a decentralized digital currency that has to be tamper resistant from any attacker, even if it's a state-grade attacker.
Right. No, and that's a good point. I'll probably get into this point when so I have not filmed the CryptoScam Monero episode yet, and we will probably get into that part more in that Monero episode. I have not, that one might air before Dash, it might air after Dash. I'm still looking for the perfect person to do that interview with, and we might talk about the potential Monero scam with FluffyPony, developer of Monero. And in case you feel we are being too critical, please go to the very first episode of CryptoScam, where we discuss the possibility of Bitcoin also being a potential scam. And it's up to the listener and the viewer to decide. And we're just here to try and provide the information.
And I think that that's a very valid point. It's something we spoke about before this podcast is, the lack of discussion over the practical issues, and not even practical, but the issues with the theoretical and practical issues with all of these cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, including Monero, including everything. If you're unable to look at the issues and acknowledge the issues that your currency of choice has, then, I mean, how are you ever hoping to improve on it? You can't walk around going, everything's fine with it.
All right, so okay, so one more question before we leave this. So, and I struggle with this myself, and this is a general question we can ask to all altcoins. Is there room for multiple altcoins? I used to think that there was, then at some point I didn't think there was. Now, because of all this contention in Bitcoin, I'm starting to think that there is room for multiple altcoins again, but then we still don't know the magic number. How many altcoins is good? How many of them will be secure? So what are your views on, needing these altcoins? Should they be anon coins? We're still struggling with this. Everyone is new to this. At one point, I thought that fungibility and anonymity needs to be at the protocol level. Now I feel that maybe it should be as a layer on top, as long as that layer on top is secure, to leave room for non-anonymity at the protocol level, because you can do very interesting things without anonymous currency. And I think a lot of those things are good. Not everyone needs anonymous currency. And I kind of like the idea of having anonymous currency as a layer on top versus at the protocol level. But in general, how do you see the future with multiple altcoins, and what is your magic number for global sustainability?
Look, I kind of view the scenario right now as very similar to the .com bubble. So many things happening during the .com bubble of the late 90s, early 2000s. Companies that were just having tons of VC money poured into them, and they all had the next big thing. You turn around and you look at the dominant companies that came out of that. Not Facebook, because that's much newer, but the dominant companies that came out of that, companies like PayPal, companies like Google, companies like Amazon, these were all part of the .com bubble. But by and large, almost everything else, barring a handful, just fell by the wayside and collapsed. Got, like, a lot of it went bankrupt. Some of it got soaked up and you know, bought it by other companies. But ultimately, you ended up with a very small percentage. And I think it'll be the same here. I think we're in a cryptocurrency bubble where there's so much VC funding and hype and irrational exuberance. And if you look 5-10 years down the line, I can't imagine that there will be more than 3 or 4 projects that are currently alive that will still be around. I really can't.
And that seems reasonable to me. And also because of the way these projects are initiated, the concept of a VC has now changed. It can now be anyone with a computer without an age restriction.
Yep. With an ICO, right?
Right, with ICO. And we will be doing an ICO series. We will talk about the ICOs individually, and I'll probably get someone on to talk about ICOs in general, because I have, in the last 6 months or more, I have been comparing the ICO bubble to the .com bubble, only I took it a step further, going, well, imagine the .com bubble where every one of those startups were using their own independent currencies for their product with a speculative value. So you take something like Amazon and you're like, well, no, you can't just buy things from Amazon. You have to go first buy Amazon stock, speculate on the company of Amazon, and then use this Amazon on the Amazon website to then go and buy your bicycle.
Yes. For what? You know?
Right. and instead of just defaulting to a common currency. Or maybe a small list of common currencies, because sometimes the more choices you have, the worse it is for the consumer.
But I do think, just as a sort of final note, like the one thing that I believe we need to bear in mind is, yes, sure, there's contention in the Bitcoin space, and it's entirely probable or possible, however you want to view it, that we will end up with a couple of projects surviving the next 5 to 10 years. But for the most part, for 99% of the stuff that is going to happen, Bitcoin's enough. And I think that, and that's not a Bitcoin maximalist view, that is just being practical. The most secure from a hashing perspective, and that does not look like it's going to change anytime soon. And there are a whole bunch of other reasons why Bitcoin is secure. The fact that it's been tried and tested over the past however many years, the fact that the market cap is a juicy target for an attacker and it's still survived. All of these are indicators of success that no altcoin has. The end.
Thank you for closing on that note. And the one thing we didn't get to with Dash, and we're probably not going to get to them in many of these proof of work coins, because even at 60-40, it is more than 50% proof of work. But in the Litecoin episode, if you go back to the when we discussed Litecoin, we talked about, at the end of the day, even all of these good proof of work ideas are going to struggle because they are competing for the same ultimate resource of electricity and a hardware investment. At some point, you have to make a decision. Where is your money going? Which electricity bill are you paying? Which hardware are you buying? And they are in direct competition. So whenever I hear someone, well, we're not competing with Bitcoin. Well, if you're proof of work, then you are. But if you're not proof of work, you're not competing at all because you're not doing anything innovative. But if you are proof of work, that you're not competing with Bitcoin, because unless you found another electricity source that is different than Bitcoin's electricity source to run the miners, you are competing with them.
No, absolutely, that's true. And I think, I mean, again, competition is not a bad thing. It's just, let's be open about it. You know, let's not pretend that there's no competition. Let's be frank when we're discussing it. So I think so. Anyway.
So on that note, thank you very much for joining me on this podcast. And why don't you plug yourself, and where can people find you?
Sure. So like I said at the beginning, I'm FluffyPony ZA on Twitter and Reddit. And feel free to tweet at me and tell me you hate me because I criticized your favorite project. Like, oh, well, you know, it's not going to stop. Like I'm a big believer in being public and open about failures in the project that I work on, Monero, and in all the projects I've worked on and contributed to. And I think we need to be public and open about failures in other projects too. And that's not a bad thing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tone.
Fluffy, for joining me. I am Tone Vase. You can find me on Twitter as Tone Vase. My blog is Liberty Life Trail. Hopefully, I will keep this series going. There's been a lot of demand for it. The CryptoScam series. You can also have my regular show on YouTube where I talk about economics and trading. And I'm also a regular on the World Crypto Network where we talk about news in the crypto space. I'm also a speaker at many conferences. And if you go to my blog, there will be a schedule of where you can find me next in person. And if you have done research in any of these coins that I will be getting to eventually, please reach out, show me that research, and I will gladly take your opinions. And I'm always looking for smart people to talk about other projects so that the world will know exactly where they stand.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.